What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I'm your host for today, Simon Villanos, aka Coach V. Currently, when I'm recording this, it is December 15th, 2025. So in case anything changes from here on out as far as schedules or rosters or recruit goes, there you go. It is time-stamped right there. And like I said, welcome back to another episode of the Playmakers Corner podcast. I will be your host for today, and once again we are going over a number of women's college flag football teams, previewing a number of teams ahead of their 2026 season. Now, on this episode, we got a decent variety of teams that we are going to talk about. One of them is an NAIA team in Campbellsville, not part of a conference, well, not yet, that is, as they are kind of doing their own thing as an independent the last couple years, but a lot of changes with that program. Got to see them play live, and so excited to talk about Campbellsville. On top of that, we got two D3 teams in Rockford University, who is now entering their second year, and then Aurora University, who will be entering their very first year. Rockford and Aurora, both from Illinois. And so very excited to talk about them on these previews. If they played a season, we're going to talk about, last year, how that went, key players, key departures, additions, all that great stuff. And then if their schedule is out, we are going to do a little bit of predicting and talk about their upcoming schedule, at least to the best of our knowledge. And if they're a first-year program, we're just going to highlight the coach and then some key players and what to expect for this upcoming season. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into it. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about Campbellsville down in Kentucky. Campbellsville University last year, they were entering, I want to say year 3 going into that 2025 season. And, they had a program best record going 10-8. They started the season, though, 3-1, pretty hot here, beating Reinhardt Huntington and then splitting the Milligan games. They lost to Milligan 6-26 and then beat them in a thriller 27-24. So there you go. And then following that, they would have a pretty rough weekend starting on March 14th and ending on March 16th, just going on a slide there, losing to Southwestern by 4, Midland by 19, and William Woods 0-13. They would end up beating Pratt Community College 19-6, but a couple of tough losses in some close games there. And then they would host a flag football frenzy, which myself and Cody were able to attend live. Shout out to them and their hospitality. It was a really good time, just being able to watch some great flag football there. But in the frenzy here, they would go 3-1, beating D3 Rockford, who we're going to talk about later on in the episode, Siena Heights, an NAIA team from Michigan, and then Howard Community College from Maryland. But they would drop a close one to William Woods, who was red hot at the time, 6-7 here. A very close game. You could check out the recap for that one on an episode from this last season here. But, altogether, other than that loss to William Woods, a pretty good, flag football frenzy for them as they hosted a bunch of great teams. Following that, though, they would then travel to Michigan, where they would play in a similar event here hosted by Siena Heights. They would lose an instant classic to Graceland, 20-25, beat Rockford 40-0, then lose to Siena Heights in a close one, 7-12, and then beat Benedictine, which is a Division III school, 54-6. And then their season would basically end up wrapping up like this. They will play Milligan one more time, this time at home, and lose a tough overtime game to them, 30-31, which was a great game for them. But, that's a big-time rivalry that they have now pretty much early on in their program's history with Milligan, and so those games are always going to be close, so that was tough. Then they would go to Georgia and beat Emmanuel 40-0, and that is how their season would end. like I said, not in a conference, and then they would decline to participate in a postseason at the NAIA Invitational. Well, not invitational, but now it's an invitational. So there you go there. Ahead of this season, 2 more teams from the conference that usually compete in the Mid-South will be joining in Lindsey Wilson and Cumberland. I don't know if they're going to have a conference championship, but I know after this upcoming 2026 season, so I want to say in 2027, a couple more teams from their conference will join, and so then maybe they'll have a conference championship then. But either way, not a bad season. Looking back, going 10-8 for Campbellsville. Like I said, that is a program high, and also I think the first time they've had a winning record in program history, and so not bad in year 3 here, and still plenty to work on. Now, unfortunately, no PMC recognition, but they have plenty of young players that I am very excited to talk about. But first, let's talk about the players who are departing, because there are some pretty big ones here. Starting with their head coach, shout out Chris Kidwell. He will be retiring, but his replacement, who we'll talk about later, I think is more than capable. They also lose athletes like Hannah Love and JC Harper, who were big time, especially early on playing both ways, and then down the stretch here being key contributors on defense. That's tough here, and so they will not be returning for another season. And so Campbellsville is going to have to go ahead and fill those spots, but I think they can, so we'll see. They also lose a quarterback who's in the rotation, Journey Knowles, who, you know, in year 2 came in and brought a little bit more stability to the quarterback position. In year 3, she was more of a quarterback, but definitely somebody who was a very serviceable quarterback for them at Campbellsville. And so she will turn over the keys to the quarterback room officially to this young group that they have over there, which we'll talk about. They also will not have Sanita Scott, and then Elizabeth Banderas is also not currently listed on their 2026 roster. Once again, that is as of today, December 15th. Now, some additions here. Let's go ahead and talk about him, starting with the coach. Shout out Spencer McCown. He is now the new head coach for Campbellsville. Coach Matt, got to meet him. He was their longtime OC, so there's a lot of continuity going on over there. Got to talk with Coach Mack quite a bit, I felt like, when we were over at Campbellsville, and so really excited for him. I think he's going to be a great coach who cares a lot about this program, and they're going to pick up where they left off. I think the progression of this program is going to be largely the same as it would have been with Kidwell, and so I'm really excited for that one. And also an offensive-minded coach. You know, as far as football goes, history shows that usually that works out pretty well, and so excited for Coach Mack over there. He will be taking over as the head coach officially. Now, they also bring in a number of recruits here. I'm just going to list them off here real quick. Trinity Chisholm from Tennessee, Natalia Gomez from Mexico, Ella Lapointe, a running back from Illinois, Kirsten Pasma, a quarterback from Canada, which is interesting, Reagan Coop from Nevada, Madison Medlin Wittenborn, running back, rusher, linebacker from Colorado Springs, Colorado, which is currently where I'm recording, went to Doherty High School, which... and I'm not trying to dox myself, but it's a whole 5 minutes away, so got to watch her play quite a bit her senior year. Excited for her. Michaela May, center linebacker from Michigan. Kinley Lewis, a quarterback from Tennessee here, and so that'll make up their recruits. Now, before I talk about those players and some of the key freshmen that I think might be contributing this upcoming season, let me talk about the players they already have there and go over some of the stats here, starting with Presley Payne, who has been just a beast for them, an athlete who's been super productive for them these last couple years. I think she'll be returning for what should be her last season here, but last year produced a lot, was their leading rusher with 648 rushing yards and 9 rushing touchdowns. As far as receiving goes, had 52 receptions, is what I should say there, and then also had 507 receiving yards to go with, I believe this is 7 either 7 or 5 receiving touchdowns. And so either way, just a very dangerous player in open space, somebody that has consistently produced the last couple of years, has been a very reliable check down option for them. And I think that only continues going into this year. She's somebody that the offense has ran through largely. If you get the ball in her hands, she's going to go get yards. She's going to go score, right? Very dangerous in open space. And so for her to be coming back is absolutely big time. They returned a number of receivers here, actually. Annalise and Angeline Beecher, the twin sisters, will be returning as well. Angeline Beecher had 44 receptions on the year for them, and then Annalise Beecher had a couple receptions here as well, but more so bigger on the defensive side of the ball for Annalise. For Angeline, though, 538 receiving yards, and also led the team in receiving touchdowns with 10. Now for Annalise Beecher here, she was a big part of the defense here, had 10 flagpoles, also had an interception as well, and I believe I'm reading this right, had 6 pass deflections too as a key part of that secondary. But those two sisters holding it down as part of this core for them. Angeline Beecher kind of having a little bit of a breakout season last year. Her and Presley Payne really holding it down and being productive, which is good because they are losing J.C. Harper, who was their lead receiver last season. So both of them will be coming back. They also return Ava Kelly, who is a 6-foot receiver for them. Not the most productive, I think only 73 yards, but is a tall receiver who, and that's on 10 receptions, by the way, but is a tall receiver who I think could take a step forward. Had 3 touchdowns, though, so that's pretty solid. Carly Troutman will also be returning, who is productive for them at receiver, but who I am very excited for on the offensive side of the ball as far as receiving goes is Alex Odom. I felt like she really came on at the end of last season here, had 27, and as a freshman had 27 receptions, and then on top of that 452 receiving yards. A lot of that production coming in the second half of the season, and then she was actually second on the team in receiving touchdowns with 9. So, like I said, the production definitely turned up at the end here. She is an explosive athlete for them. I think going into this season without a J.C. Harper, she's definitely somebody you could look at as somebody who can develop into a number 1 receiver type, somebody who just has a lot of juice, who's a deep threat, who could take the top off a defense here, and somebody who, I would expect to potentially be a breakout candidate this upcoming season. I really liked what I saw from her in the Flag Football Frenzy games that we were able to watch, and I think she has a lot of potential here as she found her footing as that season went on. So there you go there. Now on defense, and we're going to talk about quarterback in a minute, but I want to talk about the defensive side. They bring back Tamaya Woody here, who played linebacker for them as a freshman for them, and Tamaya Woody actually led the team in flagpoles with 92, also adding on 2 interceptions as well, and then a sack, so that's pretty big. As far as pass deflections go, I want to say she had 7 of those too, so very productive in her first year at linebacker. Now with J.C. Harper leaving linebacker, that is tough, right? But I definitely believe Tamaya Woody could step in and be a big part of this defense as one of their leaders, so excited for her. Rashia Minix, one of the rushers, is also returning here. Last season, she had 24 flagpoles, obviously no interceptions, but she did lead the team in sacks with 10. An up and down freshman season, but still I think a pretty good season. There were some flashes for sure. I think as she refines her game, she's going to be a bigger force for this defense. So excited to see her coming back. So there you go there. Having a linebacker rusher coming back is absolutely huge. On top of that, obviously, Presley Payne, Annalise Beecher, and then I want to say Alex Odom maybe played a little bit of defense here as well. Not a lot. I mean, she had 1 interception, right? So it's not bad at all. A couple flagpoles. But a lot of this defense is returning. And on top of that, last year they were definitely a little bit younger, inexperienced, right? Going into what will be year 4 for this program, right? You at least have a little bit more experience, not just playing flag football, but playing it on the college level, which is a little bit different. And so, look out for this defense to take a step forward as far as development goes here. There's a lot of continuity going on here at Campbellsville on offense and defense, which I'm excited about. Now, let's talk about the quarterback position before we talk about some of these incoming freshmen. Last year, I mentioned this already. I mean, Journey Knowles, she got in there, played quarterback. I thought she looked, decent for them. She threw for 424 yards, right? Also had, I think, 7 touchdowns, which was second on the team. But going into this season, it looks like it is probably going to be a quarterback battle between Corrine Talkington as well as Amani Scott. Talkington took the majority of the snaps, especially down the line here. Scott got some games here and there, and didn't play bad either. So that's definitely interesting there. Now, let's talk about Talkington first. On the season was our lead passer with 1,906 yards here. She would end up throwing 27 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. Which is not bad, altogether 153 of 308. So, not the worst, right? Could it be better? For sure, yeah. Also added on 192 rushing yards and another 3 rushing touchdowns. But overall, if you are looking at it, I mean, now that you're looking back at it as a freshman, that's really not that bad. Now, there are some tough games against Graceland, which ended up being a 5-point game. She threw 3 interceptions in that one, which is tough because, like I said, it's a 1-score game. So, any of those could have been, maybe a drive that you could have got back and scored on. Against Siena Heights, threw another 3 interceptions in another 5-point game, right? So there were definitely some learning curves there for sure as she was figuring it out as the year went on. But altogether, pretty productive. I think the talent is for sure there, but she's a learning quarterback, right? I think there's definitely some development there. Now, let's talk about Amani Scott here real quick. Like I said, Talkington took over the majority of the reps here, but Scott had some decent games. She threw for 158 yards against Midland. Now, was that a loss? Yes, but I mean, at the end of the day, she got in there over Talkington, I believe, who only threw for 17 yards in that game, which is interesting. I think she might have actually, now that I'm looking at it, might have actually got hurt in that one. She was only one of 2, so there you go there. But they went with Amani Scott in that game. Another game where Scott was pretty productive was after that against Rockford. I mean, she got in there, threw for 124 yards, and I don't know, or she threw 4 touchdowns in that game. So there you go. And that was a 40-0 blowout of them. But I mean, it's not like Corrine Talkington couldn't have done that. That was during, I want to say, the flag football frenzy. Or no, it was when they went up to Michigan. So that's definitely interesting. And then the reason why I'm saying that this might be a quarterback battle and come down to the line, even though Talkington definitely has the stat advantage, is that I believe this is their last game right here against Milligan. Or second to last game. They would play Emmanuel and beat them 40-0. But in their second to last game, in a 31-30 game against Milligan, it looks like that Amani Scott actually got in here and threw for 194 yards to Talkington's 81 yards. Talkington did throw 2 touchdowns in this game. Scott got a touchdown in this game as well, though. So there is that. Scott did throw an interception, but Talkington didn't. So it gets interesting there. And that is a 30-31 loss. So I don't know if maybe somebody got hurt or something like that in that game, but that is a lot of yards against a pretty decent Milligan team to throw against them. And then Talkington would take over for the game against Emmanuel and would have a good game as they would end up blowing them out, would throw for 161 yards against them and 3 touchdowns. So yeah, Definitely interesting, right? Definitely interesting. If I had to bet on it, I would assume if they were going to go with a starter, you know, going into 2026 here, or name one, it would probably be Talkington, somebody who's already been on the roster. But, I don't think you could ever just hand somebody a position battle right away. I'm sure they're going to look at everything and it'll be some sort of competition, right? I mean, both these quarterbacks are in the same class, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens there, but I'm just going to assume for now that Talkington is most likely the starter for them. Now, it does get interesting though, because they bring back Talkington and Scott. They're both listed on the roster currently right now. But they also recruited 2 quarterbacks who are freshmen that are coming in, and I'm gonna assume compete as well, because currently they're only listed at quarterback. It does not exactly look like, maybe it would be a gadget role here. At least, I mean, and we're just looking at the list of names and whatnot, right? It could just be nothing, but it is worth mentioning that they bring in Kirsten Pasma, a quarterback from Canada who, I got to watch through her 5v5 film, and it looked pretty good to me. She throws with great accuracy and timing, and obviously she's playing in 5s here, but even then, it shows that she's a patient processor and sees the field while delivering the ball consistently, pretty much all over the field. And so, I mean, if I had to pick a quarterback that could challenge a Talkington or a Scott or whatever, right, I think a Pasma here all the way from Canada could definitely be a candidate to start. I liked what I saw there. They also bring in Kinley Lewis, a quarterback from Tennessee here, and by the way, Clarksville, Tennessee. And, I liked what I saw. I could tell she's a little bit more raw, could use some development here, but I think she throws a beautiful deep ball with pretty decent accuracy. As of right now, I don't know if she's going to challenge a Talkington or even a Scott at this point, but could definitely be somebody that, you keep an eye on, and she could maybe develop into a good quarterback down the line, give her an off season or so. And so, with that being said, right, you now have 4 quarterbacks listed on the roster here, and so it's going to be interesting to see what happened. I would still probably give Talkington, the nod here if I was them, but we'll see how camp and offseason, preseason, and all that stuff goes for them. Either way, I think they have some capable quarterback options, which is definitely more than you could say about some other programs around the country. And I've said this before, if you don't have a quarterback, you really don't have a team. And I think they have some capable ones here, so we'll see what happens. Now, speaking about this freshman group, I don't want to talk about them for too long here because they are returning a lot of players, but there are some I want to mention. Trinity Chisholm from Tennessee, she's a wide receiver DB, has really strong hands and just very good cut ability. I think she'll be a very nice depth athlete to add that could develop into a starter if given the chance. Her film looked really good. Plays wide receiver DB from, I think it's Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Went to Blackman High School, and I really like what I saw. Developing wide receivers, a deep wide receiving core, obviously is important in flag football. I think she could be a weapon down the line, maybe even this season too. So we'll just have to see what happens there. But she was somebody that really stood out to me. And then I got to shout out Madison Medlin Winborn from Doherty here, just down the street from where I'm currently recording. She played 1 year of flag football, at least varsity flag football for Doherty, and made an impact in one of the games I watched against TCA, which would end up being a team that would go to state in her senior year. She came up with some really big plays, like a couple interceptions, flagpoles that really mattered down the line there. I don't, maybe not multiple interceptions, but she definitely had at least one. And so I'm high on her. I mean, they're looking to replace J.C. Harper, right? You already have Tamaya Woody, who's been starting, but adding another linebacker prospect like that could definitely be big time for them. And so we'll see what happens here. But altogether, I mean, yes, they do bring in, I think, a decent enough class here that'll complement this group they already have. But I mean, the continuity is there for Campbellsville. They bring back a lot of the key players at positions that you want to bring back: quarterback, receiver, rusher, linebacker, DB, a big-time playmaker like a Presley Payne, right, who I think has been super underrated in the years that she's played college flag football these last couple of years. They bring back a lot of players. And then on top of that, I mean, you're looking at this roster, you're looking at players who played last season as freshmen. They're going to take a step forward. One of these players is going to be a breakout player. I think there are too many of these freshmen that have played and gotten a lot of experience just for them to stall this early on. That's not how that works. And I know the coaching staff up there, they bring back Coach McCown, obviously, as now their head coach, and I trust what they have done year by year to develop players, right? There's a reason the record has gotten better every single year. And so going into this year, it's going to be really, really interesting. According to our PMC rankings, I want to say last season, Campbellsville this is before the, national tournament, which they didn't go to, right? But before that tournament, their ranking was sitting, it went back and forth. They slid all the way to 15, but there were times they were right up at 10 or even 11. They really sat at that 10 to 15 range as far as the national rankings go. Now, NAIA, flag football is now an invitational sport. Top 10 teams, top 8 or 10 teams are going to be invited at the end of the season to compete for a national championship. For Campbellsville to make that, they got to beat some teams in front of them to potentially have a postseason, right? Because, like I said, I don't know if they're going to have a conference tournament this early on. And so let's go ahead and look at this schedule here. They play LaGrange and Huntington a couple of times. Honestly, those are all games that I think they could win and go 3-0 pretty early. They play LaGrange on February 20th, so there you go there. And then they play Milligan. This is going to be a big one. Milligan coming off a silver bracket championship, pretty much. That is going to be absolutely massive there. That is really a team, and they play them twice, right? They play them here at the beginning and then right at the end there. At the very least, if you are Campbellsville, first off, it's a rivalry game, so it's always going to be huge, right? And they're going to start by playing this one at Milligan. But if you are Campbellsville, at the very least, you want to split that matchup, right? You want to win one, lose one. Really, you want to win both, but, we'll see what happens there. So, there you go. In that sense, I really do think they could start out 3-0, maybe even 4-0 if they beat Milligan. So, we'll see what happens there. Then they play in the IFFA tournament down in Florida. That'll be another opportunity to play ranked teams, hopefully some Sun Conference teams. And, win against any of them could get them into the top 10. And then, following that, they go play Cumberland, which is a first-year program. I would expect them to be able to beat them. But then they come back home and they host Lindsey Wilson, who is another NAIA team in Kentucky, a first-year program. But, that is a very good program led by first-year head coach Chris Raggard. He was able to recruit a pretty good team, including his quarterback Amaya Pablo and Emily Good, two players who played for him when he coached at Pace High School. And, there's some chemistry there for sure. Now, is this Lindsey Wilson team as a whole going to be able to beat Campbellsville? I honestly do not know. I think Campbellsville is deeper as of right now. They have a lot more experience, and then they have the chemistry advantage. On top of that, Campbellsville will be at home, and I would assume that's a home field advantage thing. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and say this goes Campbellsville's way, but there's a chance that Lindsey Wilson maybe is able to pull off a shocking win early on. We'll see. They have talent, but it comes down to execution as well. And chemistry. And Campbellsville, they've demonstrated it as a team more often so far, obviously, in their 3 years than Lindsey Wilson. Following that, they go ahead and play Midland. That'll be a big game if they want to make the Invitational. They got to beat them. Same with Southwestern. Those are two teams that have basically been in their spot as far as rankings go, that 10 to 15 position right over there. ideally they beat both, and I really do think it'll be close with both here. Midland, is a team that is experienced like them. I think they're built pretty similarly. That could be a close game. And then Southwestern, that's a young team. They could definitely be better. I kind of expect them to split this if I really had to choose. But there's a chance that I think it's close enough where there's a chance they could either go 2-0 or 0-2, but it's like close either way. So we'll see what happens there. Then they play University of St. Francis. That's another first-year program. I expect them to beat them. And then they have their flag football frenzy, which hopefully we will be at. Currently planning to be there. They play Siena Heights. That is a team that gets back to quarterback they intended to start last season, but had to go a different direction because of injuries. And so I think that'll be close. It's really too early to tell there. I give Campbellsville the advantage, but it's only because I've seen them with their starting quarterback or presumed starting quarterback, and I haven't seen Siena Heights with there yet, at least for this season. And so I'll give Campbellsville the nod there. They play St. Francis again. I'll give them the nod. And then they play Life. This gets really interesting here because Life is also a team that I think is currently on the outside looking in, and they need to beat Campbellsville to make the Invitational. I will give them the win here, but we'll see. We'll definitely see. Then they play Rockford, who we're going to talk about later on in this preview. I'm giving Campbellsville the win there, and I'll explain it when I go over Rockford's preview, so there you go. They play Cumberland again. Like I said, first-year program. It will be later on, so maybe it's more dangerous, but I still expect them to win. Then they go ahead and play Lindsey Wilson at their place. I'm probably going to give this one to Lindsey Wilson. I think with a team like that, that's probably a squad that you split. Maybe barely go 2-0 over them, but they have a lot of talent there, so look out for them. They then play Aurora University, which is out of Chicago. Now, we're going to talk about them on this episode. They have a couple transfers who played Campbellsville last year, and, they made some decent plays. They impressed me. They are still technically a first-year program, though, and have not played as a team together before this season. And so I'm going to give this one to Campbellsville. And then right at the end, they play Milligan. Like I said, this is probably split. So with all that being said, I still expect Campbellsville to have a winning record this season. Now, whether they are invited to the Invitational, because I think that's the thing that they are probably aiming for, is honestly, I don't want to say who knows, but it's going to come down to some close games. I think they're going to have to play some close games here. Milligan, if you could beat them twice, I think you're in, most likely. That is if you don't drop some games that you're not supposed to drop. Midland, you want that win. Southwestern, you want that win. Siena Heights, Life. I mean, these are all teams that I feel like they're going to be battling with to make it into that Invitational, right? These are all teams that are on the outside looking in, if I had to pick. And so you gotta get these dubs. And I think they have the ability to. But I also think, those teams are talented as well. They have experience. They're similarly built. Talent-wise, I think they're very similar. Who knows? Maybe they are not able to pull out those dubs there. And I think one of the things with Campbellsville that they kind of struggled with last season maybe was a little bit of consistency. Was it the same starting lineup for most of the year? Yes. But for them to, just even looking at this, play Milligan at the start of the year, lose 6-26, then beat them a week later, 27-24, and then at the very end lose to them in a close one, 30-31 in overtime. Right? That's a team that they're very close with, right? And that's a good sign. But then they would go ahead and lose 7-26, a game that's not even close, against like a Midland. They would lose to Southwestern in a close one, 8-12, right? It's games like that against William Woods, 0-13. They haven't beat them 0-13, 6-7, right? Graceland, a game that theoretically, if they are able to beat a Milligan, they should probably be able to beat a Graceland, lose to them 20-25. And so it's going to be interesting to see if this team gains consistency with experience. And I think it should be the case. I think they're going to be in a lot of close games, but for them, it's going to come down to whether they can close these games and play a full 4 quarters. And so we'll see. They are a team that, was really young last year. Going into this year, they got a lot of experience, but I think it's really going to come down to how much of that experience is really going to help them, right? How much better did they get into the offseason? Are they able to put together more games as a whole, as a team? And so we'll see about all of that. Either way, really excited about Campbellsville. They're just a very complicated and interesting team to keep an eye on, because I really feel like they have the ability to shut out some teams from the Invitational. But, they can also be a stepping stool for some teams to get into the Invitational if those squads were able to beat them. And so it's really going to be interesting to see what happens here. I think big storylines to keep an eye on. Quarterback, right? Who's their starter? And how well can they play here? I'm looking at Talkington and Scott in year 2, right? Can they be one of the best quarterbacks in the country? I think talent-wise, they're there. As far as other things like processing and reading plays and being able to bounce back from turnovers, we'll see, right? Because they were young last year. But how good is this quarterback play? Is it enough to get them an invitation to the Invitational and maybe even compete for a national championship, right? On top of that, because of quarterback play, how good is this offense going to be? Are they going to be able to consistently drive down the field and score in bunches? I think there are times that maybe they had some offensive droughts, right? It happened. But there are other times where they obviously didn't, there weren't issues scoring there, and they could score with the best of them. And so really interested in seeing how consistent this offense is. And then defensively, defensively, they've always been solid, decent. Can they take that next step forward and go up a tier? Another year, and this is without, J.C. Harper, so just keep that in mind. But can this defense as a whole take a step forward? I think they can, but it's going to take some players really stepping up or breaking out this season for that to happen. Either way, really excited about Campbellsville here. Definitely a top 25 team in the country as far as women's college flag football goes, but for them to take that next step, it's going to come down to development. It's going to come down to realistically just getting the job done when it matters. I expect them to be in some close games this season. I think they've scheduled a decent schedule here, not crazy tough, right? But also a lot of teams that are in similar spots as them. And at the end, it's going to come down to, can we beat these teams in close games to punch your ticket to the postseason? We'll see what happens, but either way, rooting for Coach Mack, rooting for Campbellsville, and all those great players over there, and excited to see what they do this season. Okay, now let's go ahead and switch gears just a little bit here. We're going to talk about a team that was actually an opponent of Campbellsville, who we got to watch live in Kentucky, and that is Rockford University, the Regents here out of Rockford, Illinois. Last season was their first, their first season competing, and they went 5-11, playing against teams, a combined amount of teams from the NAIA, some junior college teams, some other D3 teams as well, but a lot of NAIA teams in that time. Now, Rockford here would go 5-11. They would go ahead and beat teams like Benedictine University 32-0 in their first ever game. So that was awesome. They would also beat them later on in the season near the end, 20-0. They would beat Howard Community College. This was actually a game that we got to watch in Kentucky, 31-6 here. For once, actually just being more experienced than a Howard team that got started just a little bit after they did, and so they were able to get a dominant win there. They would beat Villa Maria College as well, 18-12 in a close one from New York, and then beat Pratt Community College here, 27-20 in another close one. Now, they would play other teams, some NAIA teams like Graceland, Campbellsville, Milligan, William Woods, and Siena Heights, but they would lose to those teams. Against Siena Heights, 6-30 on March 21st. Against Graceland, 12-26. against Campbellsville. Got to watch this one as well as their game against William Woods. Lost to Campbellsville 36-0, and then William Woods 26-0. Would lose to Milligan 33-6, who's a very good team over there. Would lose to Milligan and Campbellsville again when they would play them again in Michigan. They would then play Graceland and lose to them a second time, this time by a lot more, 8-47. And then they would play the last two games against Brandon Stratton College, a junior college here, a program that's been around for a minute too, so they're no slump. They'll lose to them 6-19, and then they would host them in Illinois, where they would play them, I feel like, closer than the score looks, but they would end up losing, unfortunately, to them 12-26. So there you go. And by the way, as of right now, they have not posted their schedule, but I assume there will be more Illinois teams. There's a lot more that will be playing here in 2026, so I assume they're going to play a lot of them, as well as some sort of combination of some of these NAIA schools. I'm sure like a Graceland, Siena Heights would definitely be on the schedule for this upcoming season. But before we talk about the 2026 schedule, let's talk about some of the departures, because they are losing a pretty decent chunk here. I assume this roster is, well, it's as updated as it can be, but there are definitely some key players that will not be a part of Rockford next year. And in fact, we're going to talk about them in this next segment. But on departures, they're going to be, these are all the players they are going to be without, or that's not listed on the roster. Ari Jones is one, Emily Del Rosario, Madison King, Amber LeBreau, I think it's Carissa Ballou is how you say that. And excuse me if I'm butchering any of these. Please feel free to message us so that we could get the right pronunciation. So there you go. And that way we could say it right from here on out. They will also be without Daniela Torres, Monduano, I want to say, Kayla Ladinez, Laquana Adams, Ava Davis, Clara Strong, Jenna Grice, and then Lily Rose. And so those are all the players they are missing. Now the key ones here, though, I would say, is Tiandra Henry, who is their second leading receiver as far as stats go. Now their stats are incomplete. There's only 3 games listed, but even when we watched them live, she stuck out both sides of the ball. Same with Claire Strong. That's a big one, in my opinion, to be losing. Watched a bit, or a lot, pretty much the whole Bryan and Stratton game, the last one they played in, and Claire Strong got 2 of their touchdowns at the end, and they were pretty big plays. And so Claire Strong was, I want to say, the leading receiver and a starter at corner. Losing both Henry and Strong, that is a tough pill to swallow. Those are tough players to replace. They also lose Kayla Ladinez as well. They will all be transferring to Aurora University, as well as Jenna Grice, who played a little bit of quarterback for them. She was their quarterback in their first game, and she kind of went off for 225 yards and a lot of touchdowns there, and then ended up playing more receiver here and there as the season went on. Did play quarterback in Campbellsville, though, when we watched her. And so those 4 players, Henry, Ladinez, Strong, Grice, will all be at Aurora University playing for them. And that's a tough blow, because really, I look at those players, and that's a decent chunk of their core from last season, right? And so what makes it more interesting is that other players are going to have to step up and play well and do their thing for Rockford this upcoming season. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the key players for Rockford here that will play for them here in 2026, starting with who I presume is going to be their starting quarterback, Amari Camacho Anderson, quarterback from Green Valley in Nevada, which is a powerhouse. She returns for year 2. I assume she's going to be the starter for this year here, and if she isn't the starter at quarterback, she could maybe even emerge as a key receiver, as she did play some, but I definitely think she will be the starter. Last season, she was a young player, made some mistakes forcing the ball, maybe not processing plays as quick as she can, but these are all young player mistakes that you are going to make. I think she's going to take a step forward as far as that goes here. Realistically, I think she needs to be a little bit stronger here to really unlock the next part of her game and throw consistently vertically downfield at an efficient rate. But I do think if she has done that, which I assume she's gotten stronger and has worked on her decision making, becoming a little bit more decisive, a lot more decisive, then I think she could be a very good quarterback for them here moving forward. And especially this 2026 season, with all these players that are transferring out, bringing back a quarterback is massive, right? Especially bringing back a quarterback who showed out and played well at times last season. And so I think that's going to be big time for them. And I'm excited to see what kind of step she takes moving forward, how big of a step that is, and, how it shows in her production. And not just her production, but the production of this offense. This offense will be as good as their quarterback, and, if this quarterback has taken a step forward, I think losing a lot of receivers, that's going to soften the blow, and as the season goes on, you will see this team get better offensively. So, there you go there. They do return Maureen Shelton and Mercedes Morales, who caught, footballs last season. Next to the two in Strong and Henry, they were the third and fourth leading receivers. And so, they're going to have to take on more of the workload here and make more happen. And so at least you have some sort of continuity there, although limited, it's still something. And then I think this is really important as well, but they bring back Gina Niels, who was their lead puller from last season, and she's a decent linebacker. And I think she will really help this defense get back up to speed as a leader for this team. And so, all things considered, it could be worse, right? I think they have continuity on both the offensive side and defensive side of the football. They have their quarterback on offense and their quarterback on defense. And so realistically, I think that they're going to be able to, work around some of the departures. And now I'm going to go ahead and mention the players that they are bringing in. They bring in 5 new players that are currently listed on the roster that weren't on the team last year, but they bring in Ella Stimick, wide receiver, linebacker, DB, who's local. They bring in Mia Osler, who's a grad student who I want to say plays soccer as well, but she's from Las Vegas, Nevada, which is a big flag football state. They bring in Emily Lind, a wide receiver from Chicago. They bring in, I think it's Lashala Davis, just an all-around athlete, quarterback, wide receiver, rusher, DB from Chicago, Illinois, right? They bring in Rima Aldi, I think that's how you say that, from Illinois as well. So you have a couple more bodies, right? It gets interesting here in trying to predict who will take that step forward, because flag football in Illinois, I think, is still on the come up, but it is definitely booming, from high school programs to all these new college programs that are now in Illinois. It feels like 5 or 6 new ones were added and are competing this next season, right? And so it's definitely booming. You're seeing it develop there in real time. They have athletes, right? But how developed are they going to be compared to other programs that have been established before? And so really interested in seeing which one of these freshmen, or at least new additions, take a step forward, right, and fill a spot that some of these transfers and departures are leaving for Rockford. So there you go there. It's not like they're losing everyone and have to rebuild from scratch, but they do have a little bit of rebuilding to do there. And so I'm interested in seeing what Coach I think it's Trevier, and excuse me if I'm saying that wrong, but interested in seeing what him and Coach Winters does with this Rockford squad here. They got some talent, right? But you're going to have to fill in some voids in the team that weren't there last year, right? And you had some good athletes last season, and even then, right, they were still developing and getting better as a group. And so really interested in seeing what happens for Rockford. Shout out them. Rooting for them, rooting for the coaching staff, players, hoping they have a healthy season, and excited to see what year 2 looks for them here and how all those storylines come together. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about Aurora University, which, is a team that have a number of transfers from Rockford, and key ones at that. So they are going to be playing their first season this upcoming year here in 2026, led by head coach Elaine Barlow here. Previously, the head flag football coach in Illinois he was the head coach of Perspectives High School in Illinois is what I mean. And in his 2 seasons there, went 37-1. So definitely qualified, more than qualified to go ahead and be a women's college flag football coach here, especially here in Illinois where there's a lot of new programs and they're all bringing in local talent, right? He's had success against that local talent. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how it all goes down here. But, he's put in some work here. He has a very healthy roster as far as numbers go, which you love to see from a first-year program. But I'm looking at these transfers from Rockford who are going to be the core of this Aurora University team moving forward, starting with Tiandra Henry and Claire Strong. Got to watch them, this wide receiver DB combo, got to watch them last season in Kentucky, where they carried the majority of the offensive workload for Rockford and were just really productive, moving the sticks, scoring, right? In the stats available, they scored in pretty much every single game, and it showed. They're dominant. They're different athletes who could go up, get the football, and make some things happen after the catch, but they could also go make contested catches too, right? And make the plays that you need in those big time situations, in red zone, in late down situations, third, fourth, right? And so those are 2 receivers that you want on your team to go ahead and guide a young and inexperienced squad. On top of that, they also played on the defensive side too, so that definitely helps shore up your secondary where it could. They also bring in Jenna Grice here, who played quarterback at times for Rockford last season against Benedictine in their first game, had a really productive game, 24 of 34, 228 yards and 5 touchdowns, only 1 interception, which, is a little bit of a small sample size there as far as stats go, but I think she is also a receiver, and so could be another key receiver for them if she does not play quarterback, but has already showed that she can be successful at quarterback. So interested in seeing what she does as well. Got to watch her in Kentucky, and I thought she had some serious potential for Rockford. And so having another quarterback or somebody who could potentially play quarterback, key if you are Aurora here. Now, they also bring in Kayla, I think it's Ladinez, and excuse me if I'm saying that wrong. Like I said, make sure to reach out at Playmakers Corner, and you can reply to us there, so that way we are saying your last name right. And actually, I think it might be Lardinez, so excuse me about that. But she was a productive flag puller for them at linebacker, now moves to Aurora. That'll help settle down that defense over there for this Aurora squad. And so I really feel like, that's a decent group of 4 players that you could definitely build around. And looking at this roster, I'm just going to go down the line and list them off for Aurora here. They got some players here, a decent group here that are obviously two-way athletes, multi-sport athletes who, are learning the sport, right? And could learn from these players with a bit more experience. And so just going down the line, we have Jada Morgan, a freshman from Chicago, McKenna Coons, senior from Utah here. You have Kaylin Morgan from Illinois. You have Emily Gabrocek, I want to say, a sophomore from Illinois here, so local. Samantha Galvez, another one from Illinois here. You have Jasmine Greenwood, a 6'1" athlete from Brooklyn, New York. You have Tanaya, I think it's Postlethwaite? Excuse me if I'm saying wrong. I feel like I'm butchering that, so excuse me there. From local as well. Jennifer Lynn from French Polynesia here. So there you go, a senior sitting at 5'7". You have Hannah Filandrinos from Verona, Wisconsin. You have Carla Martinez from Chicago. You have Melina Kane, a 5'11" player from Ontario. You have Genesis Mayfield from Illinois here. And then you have Rachel Wicke from Illinois as well. So as you can see, a lot of local players, some athletes who have played other sports, now trying out flag football. It's going to be interesting to see how they all fit around that core that Aurora was able to get from Rockford here, who got experience over there. Now, looking at their schedule here, it shouldn't be complete. At least I don't believe it is complete, but they're going to play a lot of teams locally, the first-year programs, right? I mean, right off the bat, it looks like they're playing Wisconsin Oshkosh, and I definitely feel like I'm saying that wrong, in Wisconsin, so they'll be playing them. Then there's a Chicago Bears event where they'll be playing a lot of other teams in some sort of, I would assume, tournament-style thing. They did something similar last season, so there you go. Then they'll play first-year programs in Marion, North Park, Lindsey Wilson as well. They'll play Benedictine, who was established last season but struggled, right? Illinois Wesleyan's a first-year program as well. Purdue Northwest, another first-year program. They play Bryan and Stratton, who has some experience but is a junior college, right? They actually play them multiple times, as well as some of the other teams I mentioned, as well as University of St. Francis, Siena Heights, an NAIA team. That'll be a tough one there. I don't know if that's super winnable, but we'll see. Illinois College is another one. Obviously, they play Rockford, which at this point I kind of have them favored in, just because it feels like they have a little bit more continuity than Rockford does at this point. Then they play Campbellsville. That's a tough one, which is probably a loss, to be honest with you. Lindsey Wilson's also probably a loss, because that's a very good, even though a first-year program, a very good team made up of players from Florida who have a lot of experience here. Then they play a lot of other teams that they played before, Wisconsin, Oshkosh, Illinois, Wesleyan, and North Park here at the end of the season. And so, with all that being said, honestly, I do not know enough about some of these other first-year programs, but I know what they have to build around, and I have them favored in most of these games against those squads in conference here. Just looking, I think it's the Northern Athletics College Conference here in D3, NCAA D3. A lot of local teams here. I have them favored for now, right? I don't know if there are going to be many teams in this conference that are going to challenge them, because I don't think there are many teams that have as much experience as they do outside of Rockford, right? And so it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I think it'll be even more interesting to see how they do against a Bryan and Stratton, a Lindsey Wilson, a Campbellsville, Siena Heights, right? Teams who are a lot more established than they are currently, and I'd be very interested in seeing how those games would go. So, all that being said, excited to follow this team going into 2026. Like I said, a lot of these players, a couple of their core players, Tiandra Henry, right? Lardinez, a Jenna Grice, a Claire Strong, right? These are players that we were able to watch live last season. And, they balled out. They did their thing. Now, going into this season, how is that going to translate for a new school, a new coach, right? In Aurora University, albeit it's a very successful coach from the high school ranks. He is still a first-year college coach as far as women's flag football goes. And so, excited to see what happens, rooting for them, and just excited to see how it all comes together in their first year as a program. All right, so there you have it. A little bit of a shorter segment for my two D3 teams in Rockford and Aurora. Really just excited to see what happens going into this next year for both of them. Rockford into year 2, obviously, and then Aurora into year 1. And then obviously you got Campbellsville, who we've been covering forever, it feels like, and they're a very interesting team. A team that's on the bubble, one of many that are on the bubble that are going to be battling for a spot in that invitational. So there you go there. We're going to be coming out with more previews this week. Hopefully on Friday we'll get an episode, and then next week we'll get more episodes. So make sure you go ahead and check us out at Playmakers Corner. Show us some love there on social media at Playmakers Corner, I believe is the handle for all of our social media accounts there. We'll be coming out with way more previews. I know soon here we will eventually come out with an official top 25, a preseason top 25 before the season starts here in February for a lot of these teams. And so that's going to be really exciting, because it won't just be NAIA teams, it'll be NAIA, junior college, D3, D2, and I'm really excited to announce that we have a couple some players who played on the NAIA level at a very high level to be voting on these polls with us. So we got some experts out here, and then we have us as well, who I would also consider experts at this point. So looking forward for the season. Best of luck to all of these great teams. As always, if for any reason I mispronounce a name, feel free to reach out to us so that we can make sure that we have the right pronunciation. So many great players and coaches around the country. We want to make sure they all get their due. Shout out Yvonne Brussel. Because I did such a bad job there. But it's all good. I'm getting into mid-season form. So thank you so much for rocking with us, and we'll catch you later.